Punk rock is a spirit that can inform whatever you do. It's about how you do what you do. Being prepared to turn left when everyone else is going right. Not taking anything at face value. Punk rock gives you the license to be all you can be. It's about turning problems into assets. And as a first-generation British-born black, that's something I know a lot about.
Calling to the faraway towns. Now war is declared and battle come down. London calling to the underworld. Come out of the cupboard, you boys and girls. London calling, now don't look to us. Phony Beatlemania has bitten the dust. London calling, see we ain't got no swing except for the ring of the truncheon thing. The ice age is coming, the sun's zooming in. Meltdown expected, the wheat is going thin. Engines stuck running, but I have no fear, cause London is drowning. I live by the river, to the imitation zone. Forget it, brother, you can go it alone. London calling to the zombies of death. Quit holding out and draw another breath. The ice age is coming, the sun's zooming in. Engines stop running, the wheat is going thin. A nuclear error, but I have no fear, cause London is drowning. I live by the river. I never felt so much like
I grew up in a 2 up, 2 down in Brixton. Brixton was kind of cool back then. We had an attitude, we had a look. Brixton in the early 70s was like little Jamaica. You're walking down Railton Road, which is the main drag through the area, and there's Rasta brethren on the street, there's people selling box juice. A record shop where you'd go every Friday night with your hard-earned money or your dole money and try and buy the latest releases. And it was just a tremendous sense of community. No racial tension, none of that. Left to our own devices, this kind of multicultural combination of misfits kind of got on.
I mean, racism, it was there. You see the thing on the walls, you know, WOGs, go home, or what's the other one, the National Front stuff, NF things, and we knew it was there, but we didn't really check it. It certainly didn't affect me.
When you went down the dole office, there wasn't one queue for black people and one queue for white people. We were all in the same boat together. I've got to say that I got the reputation of being a freak in Brixton.
Because he'd be wearing eyeshadow and fucking earrings all over the place. And my friends would see him and say, Desmond, what's wrong with Don? What's wrong with your brother? Why come he's wearing makeup and fucking dressing like that? You know, he was just weird. But he was into that Bowie shit, you know. So what can you say?
Very soon I started to wander over to the Kings Road, Chelsea. Back in the early 70s, that was the most countercultural place, the most happening place you could go. So I'm looking for more inspiration, information, whatever you want to call it, and eventually ended up working in a place called the Gene Machine. That was blinding, because this is where all the freaks were. There were dykes and the gay crew and people that were in between, and it was all about hedonism. The club scene was a big part of it, and soul started to come into the mix. Soul was big. Everyone was listening to soul. Hip crowd was listening to soul, and the white working class kids were also listening to soul. And I'm going to lots of gigs now. I'm seeing Stevie Wonder, I'm seeing Barry White, I'm seeing the Stylistics. I remember seeing Marvin Gaye one time. And I'm sitting in the audience and he's doing this thing and thinking, well, okay, Marvin, you're there doing your thing and that's great, but what am I? Where do I fit in the scheme of things? How do I empower myself? I remember consciously thinking about that, not knowing quite how to put it into action.
Don was maybe about 3 years younger than me, I guess. But Don was like, let me see now, he was fat. Fat motherfucker. And he was a pain in the neck. He thought he knew it all, you know, that kind of shit. He'd kind of sharpened up and he lost a lot of weight. Once he lost weight, he was different. From that fat motherfucker, he's now a young guy and he's working in the King's Road and he was happening. And he was a good dancer. As a good dancer, you pull girls.
So in between clubbing in the nighttime, seeing lots of girls, and seeing even more selling jeans in the shop in the daytime, I was having a pretty good time in the kind of early 70s. I quit the G Machine because they had branches all over the place and they wanted to move me somewhere like Richmond out in the sticks, which definitely wasn't so hip. So I quit the G Machine and again found myself wandering up and down the King's Road, Chelsea, and I stumbled into this place called Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die. Or it could have been called Let It Rock, because Malcolm and Vivian were always changing the names around. But I walked into what was this kind of Aladdin's cave of counterculture. There was a bit of rubber and leather gear, there was some teddy boy stuff, but it was very intimidating. It wasn't kind of user-friendly. I mean, no one ran up to me and said, "Can I help you, sir?" But there was something about this place, and I very quickly struck up a conversation with both Vivian and Malcolm. Soon after I struck up this friendship with them, Malcolm went over to the States to manage the New York Dolls. And I spent quite a few months with Vivian. One evening she took me to see Lou Reed. And I'm wearing like an electric blue zoot suit and she's wearing a translucent rubber cat suit. Got a great education from those two. It was very fortuitous meeting Malcolm because it was Malcolm that really showed me that these subcultures that I was so enamored with, they didn't happen in isolation. They had kind of a tradition and a heritage. And what I gleaned from that was that, you know, if I had an idea and I was brave enough, that maybe I could be part of this thing too.
It was that period of time when he started doing his locks. Decided to grow his locks because he had a big afro then, you know.
I mean, hanging out with Viv and Malcolm was kind of cool and all, but I needed to make some money, and Viv actually offered me a job at one time, but I really couldn't see me in kind of rubber tights and high heels. It wasn't for me, it was a step too far. And eventually, I got a job managing a store called Acme Attractions. Upstairs, it was kind of fuddy-duddy, genuine old antiques. And then there was me on this one stool with my kind of D-mob suits, 60s clothing, and a jukebox that was pumping hardcore dub reggae, which pissed all the old fogies off, really drove them up the wall. So eventually they gave us a space in the basement to get rid of us. And that's when Acme Attractions really came into its own.
Acme Attractions was a legendary clothes shop in the King's Road in the 70s. It was the cutting edge of London streetwear at the time. I can remember seeing Don, because he was strikingly good looking, proper lady killer, you know. And I guess at that time we were quite envious of him, even though we didn't know him. And in those days, if you saw, you know, a non-white face working in those shops, there had to be something about them.
There weren't many black people around who were crossing over all the roads that there were to cross, you know.
People would come down there for three things: the clothes we were selling, the music we were playing, or to meet Jeanette, who was then my girlfriend. We'd met during the soul scene a few years previous. I'd taken a shine to her and asked her to come and work with me in the shop.
Don was very charismatic, very charming, very arrogant, very smart, funny, quite cocky. There was definitely an attraction. I started seeing him immediately. I'd never had a proper boyfriend before. It was my first boyfriend. Acme became like a meeting place for all the misfits, peacocks, and rude boys because we were blasting out reggae. which attracted a really unusual crowd. It really was more like a social club. John Lydon would come in, Sid would come in, Bob Marley came, Don got quite friendly with him, Rod Stewart, Debbie Harry, Hall & Oates, you know, just endless. And then after about 6 weeks of seeing each other every single day and every single night, he sprang it on me. He was married, and that his wife was away in America for 2 months, and she was coming back the very next day.
I was in my early teens when I married Marilyn, and we shouldn't have done it. We were far too young, and I was far too volatile, didn't know where the hell I was going. That whole scene that was going on the King's Road, Chelsea, was against a backdrop of social crisis in the mid-70s. We're talking about mass unemployment, 3-day weeks, strikes, the bin men aren't collecting the rubbish. It was absolute turmoil. We were feeling the pressure on the streets, specifically under a law called sus, which gave the policemen permission to kind of pull up anybody they want to if they look suspicious. And of course, everybody black looked suspicious. So you're getting hassled all the fucking time. It got to the point where I'd be driving my car, and if I saw a cop tailing me from behind, I'd stop before they pulled me up, and I'd walk up to them and like, "Officer, please, you're making me nervous. I can't drive. Do you want something or not?" And I hit them with my best English, which would always freak them out. Another tactics I use is when they stop me on the street, I stand spread eagle, like in the American cop films. Sometimes it got a bit more extreme where they'd pull me up and I'd jump out of my car and jump on the bonnet or the roof of my car, start taking my clothes off, you know, screaming, "Why are you crucifying me?" Again, to get an audience, to take control of the situation. Having said that, if you got stopped by cops, you're on your own at night, forget about it. It was yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir.
Don was very, take no shit. Nobody. He'll argue whoever it is, police, whatever, and nothing will stop him. He's as good as the next man.
Back in those days, if black man with a car meant he was a drug dealer, meant he was a pimp, meant that he was a villain. Black guy had a car, pull him over. He must have stolen it.
So the landscape, racially, I guess there was a lot of ignorance. And for us, being the generation born and raised here, it wasn't about trying to fit in and be part of it, you know. For none of us, it weren't that. We had a different fight.
That was the thing about the racial climate in Britain. It was pretty on fire when it came to, you know, dealing with the authorities like the police and stuff like that.
And I guess that would really manifest itself in the first riots in Notting Hill.
That day, the riot at Notting Hill Carnival, oh man, I've never been so frightened in my life. Police just was running through the crowd and hitting people. I didn't know what happened. People just started rioting.
That riot actually started around the arrest of a pickpocket, or the attempted arrest of a pickpocket. And the cops jumped in somewhat heavy-handedly, but it wasn't really about the pickpocket. What it was really about was the bullshit that we'd had to put up with the whole rest of the year. This tension was bubbling. You know, it was like a pressure cooker that had to go off. Truth is, we were looking for any excuse to let it out, man. And it might sound like a weird thing to say, but it was a beautiful day. My father, St. Ledger Letts, named after a horse race, can you believe it? And my mother, Valerie Letts, came over on the Queen Mary in 1955. My father found work driving a bus, and my mother, she was a seamstress. But I was born a year later, 1956, in the Royal Borough of Kensington. There were 6 of us all together. My mother and father. Me and Norman. Desmond, who was a child from her side, and then there was Derek, a child from my father's side. That was the thing about my parent generation. It was all about the kids. I mean, their lives stopped at like 20, 21, partying, having a good time, forget about it. All they lived for was making sure their kids were well-dressed, well-fed, and well-educated. The first school I went to was Christchurch Primary School. You know, I remember bonding with this guy, who was it? Jeffrey Love. He was my best mate. You know, we were going to be friends for life. We even did the blood brothers thing. Innocent kids, innocent times. I mean, the whole racial thing didn't come into it. It's like it didn't exist. Even when there was trouble, they didn't revert to colour-coded insults. I mean, that changed dramatically when I went to my secondary school, Archbishop Tennyson's by the Oval. In 1968, Enoch Powell, he made something called the Rivers of Blood speech.
In 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
Before that speech, me and my friends were all getting on in the playground. The minute he dropped that statement, the whole landscape changed. Politics came into play. All of a sudden, I wasn't their mate Letzi, I was you black bastard. And life was never the same after that. And I've been called everything from the obvious black bastard, gollywog, Brillo Bonce, kitty cat eater, and so on and so forth. I mean, and this was relentless. The saving grace for me was that by this time, the whole civil rights thing was going on in America. 1968 we're talking about. I mean, the world was bloody exploding all over the place. And that James Brown song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud,
Say it loud!
really empowered me and made me realise that I wasn't a poor relation, that I had something to bring to the party. They'd call me a black bastard and I'd go, yeah, that's right, now what? So, on one hand, you got Enoch Powell, Rivers of Blood. On the other hand, you got James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And that's what I went with.
Say it loud! One more time! Say it loud!
And then, one day I'm in the playground and a rumour goes around. There's some band playing in this place called the Young Vic in Waterloo. Turns out it's The Who, doing what's called a full production rehearsal. I'm 10 feet from the stage. I can see the whites of Keith Moon's eyes. Townsend's doing his windmills. And my mind was blown. I didn't know what was going on in front of me, but I knew that I wanted to be part of this. Next day, I'm rebelling. Rock and roll really ruined my school life. There was nothing going to dissuade me from this new world that I'd seen, this new universe, the new possibilities. I remember one day I'm being ignored in the classroom and I wanted some attention, so I set fire to the desk. That burning of the desk was like some kind of rock and roll rebirth, because it definitely lit the way for a new Dunlets. As I'm coming out of my formative years and becoming a teenager, the whole rock and roll thing started to cause obvious problems with my parents. They'd sent me to grammar school and expected all this great stuff for me, but here I was, sort of going down a different road. And we were obviously going to rub heads. So at 16, I left home, went to live with my brother Desmond. So it was during my time at Acme Attractions that the whole punk thing really kicks off. With the advent of the Pistols, it has to be said. I was a bit jaded to it all at first because it was stealing the attentions of my girlfriend, Jeanette. Before the whole punk thing, I was the cock on the block. And all of a sudden there's these white guys coming up that are stealing her attention. And then she took me to see The Clash. And it was at that moment that I got it. And then very quickly, I struck up serious friendships with people like Strummer and John Lydon. I mean, if it wasn't for Jeanette, I might have missed the punk thing. I hadn't told you this, but if I was a total Beatle fanatic, I had the second largest collection of Beatles memorabilia in the UK. And then punk rock explodes. 2 days later, I swapped the whole lot for a fuck-off American card. It wasn't like in Starsky and Hutch. We're talking with the big wheels, the decals and everything. Punk rock was like an extreme thing. It was like out with the old, in with the new. It was like a purge of all that had gone before. By the mid-70s, the popular music of the time was all this, you know, overextended prog rock stuff that seemed a million miles from the vibe on the street. They're singing about Hotel California. We didn't know where California was, much less being able to afford a fucking hotel. Luckily for me, I had a soundtrack to ease my pain. And I had the reggae. My white mates not so lucky. So they set about creating their own soundtrack, and that would be punk rock. And you began to see the kind of bubblings in this in the end of 75, 76, and it fully exploded in 1977 with the opening of the Roxy, this new place that was started by Andrew Tchaikovsky, January the 1st, 1977. Andrew Tchaikovsky, who was Acme Attractions' accountant. And because of the reaction he saw that I got to the music I was playing in the shop, he asked me to DJ there. I'd never DJ'd in my life. I had no aspirations of becoming a DJ, but I thought, I'll have a go. Now, this is so early in the punk rock scene, there ain't no punk records to play, no UK ones anyway. So what am I gonna do? I play what I like. I'm playing hardcore double reggae. So Andrew offers me the job at the Roxy, and he says, oh, I'm looking for staff. And I go back to Forest Hill, where I'm living with my Rasta brethren. I'm like, you want to work with these punks down in the West End? They were like, get the fuck out of here. They're not interested at all. I said, well, look, just come and have a look.
So the Roxy Club is like this punk club everybody knows about, right? Yeah. And Don was going to be the DJ. Because by now, he was living in Forest Hill with Leo and JR and a bunch of other guys, so I had a little posse up there.
It's 4 of us. 4 black guys living in Forest Hill. Old couple living downstairs. And the landlord wanted us to make noise to get the old couple out. Which we tried, but they didn't move in the long run.
Don said one day, look, he's got a gig as a DJ at this club. When he wanted us to come down, we could work behind the bar and get a little job here and there. When we decided to go to the Roxy now and see all these punks and guys wearing pins through their nose and swastika shit and bondage things, they were really freaky. And Jamaican boys, we're not used to this thing. This is weird. At first, we were frightened. These were weirdos, these kids. But somewhere along the line, man, I mean, you know, we got on.
They come down to the club and they see 2 things. They see the girls and they see an untapped herb market. 2 days later, all my Rasta brethren were working at the club.
I was the dealer there. So that was my job. That was my little earner. Sid Vicious and guys like that would come up and ask for 2 special brew and a spliff. And we had to keep this really quiet because Andrew would go nuts if we knew we were selling ganja because we were probably making more money than him at the bar, you know.
I'll never forget seeing Shane McGowan drunk and he said, give me 2 beers and 1 spliff. And after a moment's thought, he said, no, give me 1 beer and 2 spliffs. Perfect example of cultural exchange.
We're there pretty much every single night that it existed. And one day he just announced, I think I'm going to get a camera. And from that moment, he was filming practically every band that played there.
He probably saw it before I did, before Leo and us. Don saw it. He was ahead. He saw the young guys coming up. He saw what they were into, their attitude and what they were trying to say, you know. These guys were breaking barriers and doing their own stuff. He probably could see the energy. He could see what these young kids who had nothing, you know, just bored out of their head, want to do something and get some excitement back, you know what I mean? He just picked up on that and then just went with it, so just got it and run with it. Now he was involved in this new movement that was happening. When we were growing up in Brixton, there was no black people on TV, and there was no black anybody, you know, so for him to pick up a camera and make videos, we were in awe.
He's not one to sit around and wait for anything. He's out there. He's trying to see what he can do, what he can make himself better. I think if you come from a black family, you have to have some kind of drive behind, you know, and no one ain't gonna help you. Donnie's got that drive, and getting a camera, he found his forte.
Don's an artist. Don needs a method of expression. It's not just being a groover, looking good, playing great records. He becomes who he is. He becomes Don Letts at that point. You know, we wouldn't know about him if he hadn't picked up that camera.
It was eye-opening to see these kids brave enough to do what they want and making their own kind of music and dressing how they want. These guys want to do something and they're doing it. They're not asking if we can do it or nothing like that. They're just doing it. You can do what you want if you want to. With the right attitude, you can do what you want. Our background and where we come from, our culture, we were suppressed because you'd get in so much trouble, man. It like put you off. You kind of been denied things because you don't want to be in trouble. But these guys are doing it and they show you can do things. You just got to do it. Believe in yourself and do it. Don't worry. Just do it. After we finished playing and working at the Roxy, a lot of these guys would get in their cars and follow us back to Forest Hill.
Don's place in Forest Hill was great fun. We'd go there after the Roxy sometimes, drive in Don's little car all squashed in and go back and pretend we were big-time marijuana smokers.
We went back to Don's house to hang out and stuff. Lots of people did. Don was really cheeky, and so he would always say, like, the funny thing. You could tell immediately how brave he was, not only because by how he looked, he would stand up for himself.
Those people that ended up with us back at Forest Hill after the Roxy were a very different crowd of people, and they wouldn't normally be socialising together. And that Forest Hill scene made it easier for people to actually be friends with each other and communicate instead of in tribes.
One of the things that drove punk rock at this fast and furious pace was this sense of competition. You know, there was the Clash camp, the Pistols camp, Slits, Banshees, and never the twain shall meet kind of thing, except when they went on tour. But I quite happily bounced between all the... I was never this kind of choosing sides kind of guy. One day in the New Musical Express, I read, Don Letts is making a punk rock movie. I think, shit, that's not a bad idea. I'll call it a movie.
No, Ben, look. Just wine.
We had these little Super 8 cartridges. We'd get them developed and we'd bring them back to Forest Hill and string them out across the room and hold them up and look at them and edit it with sellotape. The bands were already there. The scene was set. It was just a case of capturing it and splicing it all together. The thing about Don was that he was always on a mission to achieve something. He was always going to make something happen. And that was the vehicle.
In June, July 77, Bob is living here after having been shot. He's living on the King's Road. He sees all these nasty, stinky, dirty, punky people. Then Don goes round to see him, possibly to bring him some herb. Don is wearing bondage trousers, and Bob gives him a finger-wagging rap about this. That Don stands his ground and explains, you know, that actually punks are just the same as the Dreads. They're just oppressed and being shat on as well. So Bob comes and to get some ray of light has flashed down on him. In a way, you kind of feel that Bob Marley to Don was the person that Don would like to be. He was the ultimate You know, he was Jamaican, but also from complex mixed parentage. He's a fully integrated human being and smokes colossal amounts of weed.
Back in the punk days, 77, a lot of my friends just come back and tell me about this crazy dread that was knocking around with the Slits in the Clash and people like that. He was always had this thing in his hand, recording everything, you know? And I was quite jealous, actually, because he was hanging out with, you know, the real top punk bands and all the people that we absolutely worshipped.
It's a source of inspiration. Whether he opened his mouth or not, just by looking at him, you could understand the man was coming from a different angle still.
Don was the rebel dread, stirring things up, and to be honest, I actually wanted to be Don Letts.
Eventually, John Crevene and Steph Rayner, they decided to close Acme and open something called Boy, which was up on the main drag of Kings Road, because punk was beginning to grab the tabloid headlines now. So they jumped on the tabloid punk bandwagon. Me and Jeanette opened the shop, and after a few weeks, I really couldn't hold my head up, and I quit to attempt to manage the Slits. I sort of took some of Steph and John's money, gave it to them to go on the White Riot tour with the Clash and the Buzzcocks. By the time we hit Boy, Jeanette had just plain outgrown me. And while I was on the White Riot tour, Jeanette went off into the world and ended up actually working with John Lydon when he started Public Image.
I had to dump him. I just wanted to spread my wings and experience things. I wanted to go off and do things, check things out on my own. He wasn't good. He wasn't good. I was upset about it.
The White Riot tour, it was fast and furious, as was the whole of punk rock. And on that tour, you did see a bit of violence, because this kind of negative idea that had been perpetrated by the tabloids had filtered out into the suburbs. One of the reasons that the punk rock thing exploded so quickly and got misinterpreted so quickly is the whole Bill Grundy fiasco, when the Pistols appeared on that TV show and, you know, John swore. All of a sudden, everybody around the UK knew about this phenomena through this very popular afternoon TV show.
Dirty fucker. What? What a fucking rotter. Well, that's it for tonight.
God bless the Pistols. I mean, they kick-started everything, but it was only one album. Without the Pistols, there'd probably be no Clash, but it was left to the Clash to take that ball and run with it and give punk meaning.
That's all. So when I first met Don properly, and his friend Leo. Well, the thing is, the Jamaican community and how they had to pull together to protect themselves and also to get on was sort of quite a good template for the punk movement, because it was a question of like, well, we're outsiders, we need to pull together and get our own thing together, because they've got their thing together, let's do ours.
It was on the White Riot tour that I really formed my bond with the Clash, particularly Paul Simonon, because he had a similar background to myself. He was working class and also grown up in Brixton. And most importantly, he was a skinhead. And we're talking about the fashion version, as I said before, not the fascist version. So we were brought together by a mutual love of Jamaican music and style.
In reggae music, they talked about what was going on and how it affected them. People weren't quite sure of us at the start, because they didn't really know what this thing was that was starting, you know. It was really against everything that was going on at the time. Both were outside of the norm, you know.
In managing the Slits, Don was being quite brave. It was just so rare to have this lively, uncensored, uncut way of approaching the world. Scared a lot of guys. That's where Don was an unusual man, because he dug them. And they accepted him, which they wouldn't have just everybody. He was sensitive enough and had enough of a vision for them to respect him.
In the beginning of the whole punk thing, there was sort of quite a small community, you could say, and Paloma, she was a good friend of Joe's, drummers, and Viv with Mick, Albertine, so it's sort of like a little community. I think it was just a situation of, look, we're all in the same boat, so, you know, God help us all, let's just get on with it. And that sort of went across whether you're male or female. It was sort of like, let's all play music, whatever your sex, you know.
Punk rock movie was so real, just so very good that he did that, because otherwise it would have been made up. So you can see it for real, or bits of it anyway.
The punk rock movie, I was going to say put me on the movie map, but that's bullshit really. It just put me on some kind of map that people knew who I was.
I look at them as like kids. They're the kids in this country, and they're feeling the same problems which I feel, and that's what they're making noise about.
We're saying about some changes which we brought by the movement. What do you think? Will it change society?
Can they change it? Well, let's see. Well, I can't see into the future, but I know what's gone before me, and I know they have affected some changes. They'll take the next step and cause any like big social change. I can't say. I can only hope and help as well. Just to have a voice and stand up and be counted. I don't think there's a lot more to say really. I mean, any more than that is for the punk rockers to say. I mean, I can only speak about the way in which we, which we're similar. I can't speak on their behalf as a punk rocker.
Kind of opened doors for me, and I quickly realised that I should kind of use that momentum to try and get to wherever I wanted to go. Didn't really know where that was, but I knew I wanted to be involved in film. By the end of 1977, the Pistols had imploded, and John was looking to escape the media madness, and went to Jamaica with Richard Branson to start a record label called Frontline. But don't forget, the Pistols had broken up like a few weeks before, and a big wait, man, and everyone's focused on this dude to see what he's going to do next. Me being black and his mate, he invited me along.
I got the opportunity to go to Jamaica, and I thought, now who am I going to bring there with me? I'm not going to go alone. I'm going to bring some special friends that really want to achieve something in this world. Don wanted film. He has Jamaican roots. He'd never been there. Give him the opportunity and let him struggle there on his own and see what he can come up with.
I'd never been to Jamaica in my life. I mean, the closest I'd been to Jamaica was seeing A Harder They Come in my local cinema in Brixton. Seeing A Harder They Come was the first thing that made me really understand the power of cinema. You've got to understand that for a long time we knew what we were supposed to sound like, right? But we never had any visual interpretation of our culture. We'd grown up in the UK. We didn't know what Jamaica looked like, man. Two things happened to change that. The advent of Bob Marley and A Harder They Come.
You want to go and beg work for $10 a week for the rest of my life? I'd rather die.
Seeing A Harder They Come that made me think, maybe I'd like to express myself in a visual way.
Did not tell you I was going to be famous one day.
But at that time, the idea of a black man being a film director or a filmmaker, ridiculous. So I forgot about that.
I had a vision last night.
24 hours later, plastic bag with some underpants and a few bits of clothing, I was in JA with Jamaica, first time in my life.
That was the first time he'd been to Jamaica, and it was kind of quite profound for him. You could see from his facial expressions he was sort of going through some stuff. He knows Jamaica, but he knows a sort of, a mythical Jamaica, really. There's a lot of romance created around, you know, ghetto gunmen. The truth is that there isn't any real romance about that. It's pretty horrible, actually. Because he was out every day going downtown filming, you know, in the ghetto areas. He was really surprised at the extent of the poverty, the violence. It was dangerous. It's in the middle of the Civil War there, you know. So it was very tricky for him. Children of Jamaican or parents or from any other country, actually, it's their parents' country, and they tend to have a strange relationship with it. You know, they're not sure about it. They're not sure whether they should embrace it or reject it completely. I think some of that was going on with Don.
Richard had booked the first floor of the hotel.
Why not let's get together and live in one love and one unity, you know?
And the jungle drums went out. Rich white man in the area signing up reggae artists. Over the next 2 weeks, there was an exodus to the hotel of artists trying to get a deal with Richard. All of a sudden, I'm sitting around the hotel pool, and there's Iroy, U-Roy, Big Youth, the Gladiators, Lee Scratch Perry. Probably the most amazing trip of my life, being surrounded by all my heroes over the space of 2 weeks. All these names that I'd previously seen on record labels, and I thought were like legendary artists. And I come to Jamaica and I see the reality of their existence. You think these guys would be living large because they'd made records, but au contraire, mon ami. I mean, it was tough. I mean, these guys were all hustling and desperate to get a deal and impress John, because John was the taste master. It made me realise that there's no real justice in the music business, man. The real pioneers never get to collect. It's the people that water down their ideas that make the money. I had the idea of checking out my roots in Jamaica and going to visit my grandparents who I didn't know. I remember, funny enough, we went in this bloody white Cadillac that it was available to the clientele at the hotel. I actually found where my grandmother lived, and I remember knocking on the door. And I remember my grandparents just looking at me like we were fucking aliens. I just went, "Hi, I'm a grandson from England, and I'll come back later." Never went back. It was too much of a trip. I mean, talk about culture clash. I was so disconnected from their reality, and I didn't really have the time or the inclination, I have to say, to kind of try and make them understand. And I just went about my business.
Taking Don to Jamaica opened his eyes, and opened my eyes too, I've got to say. I selfishly used his eyes to see Jamaica from his family's point of view. We had the most fantastic time.
John Lydon, brother's deep. I mean, that whole punk thing, that was never going to work for him. He was too intelligent for that, and that's why he had to break free from the Pistols. There's a lot of time when John was in Jamaica and he'd be quiet and staring off into the distance and all that stuff. And it was only later on that I kind of realised that he was kind of thinking about what he was going to do next. And that would manifest itself with the creation of Public Image. I mean, you've got to understand that the people that actually made the music, they're all pulling in different directions. Partially drug-informed. You know, some were going up, some were going down, some were going sideways. But somehow, John managed to pull all this shit together and come up with something that was truly refreshing. So when John gets the opportunity to make his first music video, he turned around and asked me to have a go. And it was weird because at that time, you couldn't have stuff broadcast on TV unless you were a member of the Film Union. So we had to have a ghost director, and I sat in a chair and sort of told him what to do. I mean, to be honest with you, I was totally out of my depth. Before that, I was Don Letts with my Super 8 camera. Now I'm surrounded by a union crew and I'm having to tell them what to do.
It just was really fabulous. You know, he'd put him into a new position. And shortly after that, he does the London Calling video, of course.
That was Don's first video with us because we'd done a couple of videos before and then we found that we could get what we wanted. And that was like a major thing, you know.
London calling to the faraway towns. Now war is declared and battle come down.
We met out by Battersea late at night. He had lights rigged up and we just started filming.
I remember it rained during most of the filming of the video and one of our guys afterwards threw the monitors into the Thames.
And listen, I fucking can't even swim, so I didn't know the Thames had a current, I didn't know there was a tide, and I wanted to put a camera on a boat. By the time we worked everything out, it's fucking night time and it's pissing down with rain. Turns out, best luck I ever had.
After we did the London Calling video, what we did was call up the bank robber and rock the Casbah.
Told the boogie bear, you have to let that rock drop.
The creative side developed where, like Rock the Casbah, there was an idea of having an Arab team play football against an Israeli team, showing them getting on, so to speak. But the record company were a bit shocked by that idea. Don had brought an idea to simplify what the record company were terrified of.
Rocking the Casbah was a big deal. Man, that was a massive hit on MTV and probably one of my favourite videos. As is Radio Clash, that really utilised images from when they were doing the whole Bonds scenario, when they played those 23 dates back to back.
Our manager went up and did big posters up in the Bronx. You wouldn't really expect that because we were in Times Square, you know what I mean?
We were booked there to do 7 shows. We'd done 7 shows in Japan, 7 shows in London, 7 in Paris, and we were going to do the same in New York. But what happened is that because we were taking over the whole week, we were taking a lot of the business away from the other clubs. So they sent the fire chief down and announced that we had too many people in the building. And Don was sort of around filming a lot of this chaos.
Some stupid shithead fucking sold too many tickets.
And they really took New York, man. I mean, you know, there was riots in Times Square. I mean, you know, Scorsese's turning up, De Niro's turning up.
For all of you who wanted to see the Clash at Bonds tonight, they were about to appear about 40 minutes from now. And
you're anxious to play, you know, you get very wound up when you're going to do a show. And, you know, we were willing to do 2 shows on Saturday. That's double wound up. And we want to play, you know, so we're just pleased to be able to get on stage.
When we went to New York in the 80s and we did a residency at Bonds, we fell in with a lot of the graffiti artists. It was just that moment when hip-hop and rap was just starting.
The first time I actually went to New York was with the Slicks, when they played at a club called Hurrahs. It was winter, didn't really get into the vibe. When I really got to know New York was with the Clash. And at that time, the whole hip-hop thing was emerging.
New York was quite an interesting place because you'd see kids on the street sort of rapping. I suppose it was birth of hip-hop, really, is what we was witnessing.
Kind of cultural melting pot that felt very similar to what was going on in the late 70s in London. But now it was about hip-hop and punk rock.
It was a really great time. It was an exciting time. It was a time of change.
When we hit New York in the early 80s, it was, I was going to say coming out of a recession itself, actually in the recession, because it was kind of fucked up. There was just like what they call shooting galleries where you basically get your drugs. It was down there that a lot of the graffiti artists had taken out spaces because it was all low rent. I became friends with people like Fab Five Freddy and Futura and Dondi and Hayes and Zephyr, all the emerging graffiti writers.
So we transferred, the energy from London punk had kind of transferred for us to New York. I did have another boyfriend in New York who was Futura 2000. He did a rap on one of their Clash tunes and he became quite a big part of the scene for a while.
It was all about identity, trying to find meaning, trying to work out who you are, where you fit in the process. The Bonds, I was going to say fiasco, the event, whatever you want to call it, I mean, really put the Clash on a world stage and took them up to here. And I think it kind of caught them off guard. Joe always tried to keep it real. He never got taken and enamored with that whole cult of celebrity and all that stuff. He was a very grounded person, Joe. But Joe was human like the rest of us. Kind of fucked up too. You know, if Joe had to make a horrible decision, he'd quite often maneuver things so other people would kind of carry out whatever he was thinking. I remember when they sacked Mick and they got Paul to call me up and say, well, look, you know, Don, if you're hanging with Mick and you're friends with Mick, you can't really be friends with us. And I knew that Paul didn't want to make that call. I remember when I got that call, I was sitting in Los Angeles watching the TV in a bar called Duke's. The video Rockin' the Casbah came up and I cried. I fucking cried. You know, you can't really push Don Letts into that position if you have to decide this or that roster. I can't do that.
I suppose it did get a bit awkward because Don had always worked with us regarding Clash stuff, but now the Clash had gone in a different direction and Don was working with Mick. So we decided that I would phone Don up to explain that we'd have to part our ways in terms of working. Mick moved on with Don in creating BAD and me and Joe wandered off into the sunset.
When Mick had been unceremoniously kicked out of his own band, fairly quickly got stuck back in, and one night I find myself in a nightclub with Mick. And Mick looks to his left and he looks to his right and he's like, you know what, we look like a band. And that was the beginning of my next 8 years. I mean, you've got to understand, you know, from seeing The Who back in '71 and wanting to be in this world, now I was presented with the opportunity.
Somebody I never met, but in a way I know. Didn't think that you could get so much from a picture show.
Big Audio Dynamite's sound was a combination of what we were all into. We're talking about heavy Jamaican bass lines, New York beats, Mick's rock and roll guitar, and me doing the whole sample and dialogue thing.
No, I don't think I'm going to let you stay in the film business.
What was interesting about Big Audio Dynamite, no one seemed to notice this at first. They're this first act using kind of movie samples from the soundtrack or samples from the dialogue.
BAD really reflected us and our lives. That kind of cross-fertilization is the thing that makes magic happen.
You know, I loved all that because, you know, you stick a black guy in there, you stick a punk in there, you stick a dread in there, and you mix it all together, and what do you get? You know, you get something quite interesting, you know?
I wanted to do something more at that time, you know. I wanted to make music that reflected the music that we were hearing, which was difficult because considering where I'd come from. It was a bit hard for me coming out of that. And I immediately wanted to get on and do something. So we did it all very fast, and by '84 we were out there playing. Well, our first gig in New York was this place downtown, and Grace and her friend Jessica were there.
We went to the show and I met Don, and Don used to wear at the time the dark sunglasses. And I just remember thinking that, you know, who wears sunglasses at night in a nightclub? It started right from the start, we were kind of friends. And then they came to New York to record Upping Street, and they were there for the whole summer.
Problem with that was, Audrey, who I'd met the year before, was about to have my first son. Just as Jet's being born, Mick asked me to join Big Audio Dynamite, and I'd throw myself into that like I do with every project I do. And I was going to say our relationship suffered as a consequence of that, but it didn't suffer as a consequence of that. Our relationship suffered because I met Grace. Grace is your archetypal New Yorker. When I met her, she had peroxide blonde hair, legs for days, easy on the eyes, but what got us together was her character, eager and open to ideas, and kind of inspired me to be better. I wanted to be a better person, to earn her respect, earn her love. And having that behind me drove me forward. And there was a horrible overlap. I was leading a double life for something like 8 years. I can't actually remember, it's just a fucking big blur.
We were really just experimenting in things and seeing if we can put this stuff in, and Don's contribution was so big. Don wrote lots of lyrics for the songs.
His contribution was not just musical, I think it brought the cinematic element. He brought something different that maybe Mick wouldn't have thought of, and the combination of the two working together was brilliant.
He couldn't play, he didn't sing, but he can write. He can write. I think he soaks up all that he's been through, and he can put it to paper.
And obviously he was feeling like he had to follow someone like Joe Strummer.
I mean, come on, man, that was a special chemistry. That was the Jagger and Richards, Lennon and McCartney, Morrissey and Marr. These things don't happen that often. For the second album, Mick had the brilliant idea that we should record it in New York. And that was a real buzz, because while we were there, I went out to Times Square one day and I bumped into Joe Strummer.
One day, Don was walking down the street and he bumped into Joe and he said, "Come down to the studio, we're doing a record." And then he wouldn't leave.
Try and keep it steady.
He ended up co-producing the record, and that was so great, for me especially. That was a good thing, because Joe and I, after the Clash, we soon became friends again. We just never got back together again as a group. You have no time when you're younger, because you're just rushing. So if you thought it out, it might have been different, but no, you didn't. And so that was good.
What happened over the next month or so was that I had a front row seat watching these guys, I guess, kind of creatively fall in love again. And we just sat back and watched this thing happen. I mean, a lot of people could have been pissed off by them getting back together in the middle of us making our album. But I felt privileged to see that happen. You know, you're talking about one of the greatest writing duos in history.
If you don't know where I come from, you better steer clear of my trail from the dark.
They asked me to be their tour manager, and to me that was a big buzz. If it wasn't for Don and Big Audio Dynamite, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in places like Rome and Hollywood and New York. That gave me an opportunity to travel and see the world. Big Audio liked having people backstage. That's part of their thing. And the fans loved to hang out with Don and Leo and them guys and Mick and stuff. So part of my job was to kind of like, after the gig, I'd probably find some fans and wherever and give them a little sticker or something to come backstage and hang.
Okay, I'm ready for the show, Mick. I'm ready for the show.
He's mischievous, Don. You know, he'd love to play pranks, and he's a prankster. He's a joker. It's an important part of his makeup, his sense of humour.
We played a great gig in Boston, early BAD, and then the dressing room was always crowded afterwards. It was so crowded. Don and I went into the cupboard because we wanted to talk, and we were in there talking, and then the janitor came in and got his mop and bucket.
Now, Bosco's my main home. I can't find water. The problem is, I can't find the papers. You can't find the papers, man. That's a man on a roll of joint, want to get to the point. My man Don Letts in a place to be, like the, you know what it is? You know what it is? You know what time it is, John? It's time to find some papers. Document work. Don knows what it is. Blow it up! No. Because this is what I'm saying.
And one night in Irving Plaza, we had Pete Frampton in the audience, Dave Stewart, Jimmy Cliff, and David Bowie. That was a buzz for the little black kid from Brixton, I can tell you. From that moment on, from the time we were doing Upping Street, that's when Grace becomes part of my life. Not officially.
We kind of couldn't separate. We tried a few times, quite a few times actually, and it was something that was just inside. It was just what it was.
I was trying to fight the inevitable. I was trying to do the right thing. I didn't want to leave my kids. But in so doing, I actually did the wrong thing, because what I really should have done was put my hand up and go, look, I'm sorry, but I've fallen out of love. I've fallen in love with somebody else. I mean, easier said than done. Undoubtedly, when we first went out, people were expecting us to play Clash tunes and blah, 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 but we were doing so well with this new sound, because it sounded really different. Because no one had kind of done that mix before and had hits with the sample and dialogue. We were having a commercial success with a new way of approaching music writing. I first held our debut album, This Is Big Audio Dynamite. It felt like I'd arrived.
We got the juice.
I got my ticket. This child that had grown up being so enamored with music and part of the vinyl generation and having this analog attitude, I finally get to chip in my 5 cents, man. And I started to find my feet and became a lot more confident, because from then on it was a fairly cool run for about 8 years.
Never stop long, just passing through.
I ain't gonna lie, there was some kind of behind-the-scenes business shenanigans going on that were beginning to grate with me. But there was something else going on. I realised that I was starting to write these lyrics that were very personal to me, and I didn't think it was fair to ask Mick to sing those songs. So between that and the normal things that make great bands implode, I was off. And I started a group called Screaming Target. You know, I wanted to know what I could do without Mick, in the same way that probably Mick wanted to know what he could do without Joe. Problem is, Mick's a musician and I'm not. Having said that, I ain't ashamed of the Screaming Target thing. Should have got a vocalist. Only mistake. Yeah, fucking ego, man. Get you every time. Call it synchronicity or some weird shit, but the minute I get fed up with Screaming Target, I get a phone call. Do I want to come and film second unit covering the independence of Namibia?
Liberation.
The idea was I was supposed to go around the country and interview people and cover the effect of Namibia's independence. That was a buzz. First time I'm going back to the land of my forefathers. I mean, first off, I'd never been in any environment where everybody was black. The other shock was, I'm there with like a white film crew. Must have had about 6 people under me.
I don't know what you're saying, but it's my hair.
And the Africans, kind of, okay, you people are white people, we've seen and interacted with you, we know what you are.
Don't be taking it off, though. Don't cut it off or anything.
With me, they were totally freaked. And they couldn't figure me out. That was a major eye-opener. I think what really freaked me out was how alien my roots were to me. You know, you felt like through the reggae and your education and all the rest of it that you had some connection. But no, man, I realised I was the lost tribe. I actually went out to the Namibian desert. It's a vast place. You'd be driving in your Jeep and you'd see these people coming towards you and you can see behind them and there's nothing for miles in the distance. And you know you've just come from the same thing. And these people are just walking through the desert. I mean, we were in the Namibian desert for about 3 or 4 days, and we actually got lost. And at one point, I thought I was gonna die. I mean, we ran out of gas, we'd broken down, and we were rescued by some German safari people. Never been so glad to see white people in my fucking life, I can tell you. I think what I took from that African experience was the fact that, for better or worse, I was this kind of unique black and British thing. And to pretend that I was anything else was ridiculous. Now, you've got to understand, from the time I did my very first video, Public Image's debut, I kept that going on for quite a while and sort of squeezed one in whenever I could. I did nearly 400 music videos for various bands. You know, I don't think I stopped till around the mid-90s. I did videos for Elvis Costello. I did Chris's video, Back in the Chain Gang.
Back on the Chain Gang.
The Pogues, Summer in Siam, S Express, Baba Mal, Maxi Priest, Jabba Ranks, Jimmy Cliff, The Gap Band, Linton Kwesi Johnson, Black Uhuru, Sly and Robbie, did Eddie Grant in Jamaica. Took Sean Ryder's group Black Grape there. I shot the first video with Ice-T in it. Got to make a couple of videos for Bob Marley. And then one day there was a week when there was nothing on the slate that appealed to me. And a track came in by this band called Rat. Round and Round, it was called. Well, we put it out. They're on tour, supporting Motley Crue. This fucking video is a smash. And in the middle of the tour, they had to switch the headlines. And Rat became the headline group. And that's probably in the States my most famous video. I guess some of my proudest video moments would be things like Musical Youth, Pass the Dutchie. That was #1 in 18 countries around the world. It was actually the first black video on MTV. But they didn't count it because the brothers were like this big and had a Birmingham accent.
Pass the Dutchie on the left hand side. Pass the Dutchie on the left hand side. It a go bun.
So in the 80s, I've kind of made a name for myself as a video director. And I get a phone call from MTV. Don Letts, you're the guy that makes the Clash videos. We'd like you to come in and do an interview. I'm like, great, I'll go and do an interview. I go to their office in Midtown, New York somewhere. This is the early 80s. And I walk into the office and everyone's looking at me kind of fucking weird. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, no, I smell all right. And then this guy sheepishly comes up to me and takes me into this office. And he sits me down, hangs his head, and says, look, Don, this is really embarrassing, but Don, we can't do an interview with you. I'm like, how come? He's like, because we didn't know you were black.
There were no black artists on MTV, so putting them right in front of Parliament was a message to the then government, kind of knocking on the door, as it were. He took them to the living rooms of Britain. Don was the spearhead of making videos in England for black groups. 1, He's intelligent. 2, he's very brave. He's not afraid to knock on the door of someone like Chris Blackwell and say, look, I've got an idea. Fly me to Jamaica, and when I come back, you're gonna have the most amazing film you've ever seen.
Dancehall Queen. A homage, really, to Harder They Come, which was about this larger-than-life macho Jamaican male character. And it struck me that it was really the women that were keeping Jamaica together.
You can't stay here, so you know, this spot you reserve. I now move, sister. This is my move for me now.
Because all the guys still wanted to be like Jimmy Cliff.
What you think I do? Eh? Me try keep you out of trouble. You don't hear what me say? Me say, I now move.
He's great because the topics he chooses to work with are culturally very important to shaping opinions and forming perceptions, especially, you know, of black British. He makes these films and documentaries from the platform of personal experience, and he's able to bring all of that personal lifestyle experience to the screen.
When he talks about something in his documentaries, he always talks about it from a personal point of view, like you're looking out of his eyes. It's always about a black kid growing up in this society with all these different things going on. So there's some sort of relation to what he's about or how he felt within that situation.
When you look at Don's body of work, things like Gil Scott-Heron, Sun Ra, Clash documentary, all of that stuff, there's a link. All of those people, their creative and cultural output is about freedom, and it's about a kind of fire in the belly. And that's really key and really important, because if you're actually changing the world around you or crossing boundaries, what you need to be doing is following your creative path and just pushing yourself down the road that you want to be down.
If I do something, I feel like it needs to justify the space it occupies. Made films about things that mean something, man. They deserve that space. And they can actually help to move things forward. I'm always trying to make a film about myself through these people. I've always gravitated to artists that aren't defined by their colour. I believe that these people are doing something that's worth passing on because they're part of me. And it's about passing on this energy. Either speaks to me or it doesn't. 1 second. Starting to shoot. Edit. Phone's buzzing. Oh, I've got to text my daughter. 1 second. Hello? Hello? Hello, Dad? Yeah, hello? Go on. Hi. Are you... Okay, baby. And then what are you doing after Oxford Street? Okay, baby. Well, hang out if it's a nice day, hang out down there. Down there's safer than other places. All right? All right. Speak to you later. Bye. Sorry, guys. Bye. Where was I? After I got busted and Audrey kicked me out, it was inevitable that me and Grace were going to get together. And eventually, we got married.
Don and I got married November 20th, 1997. It was almost something like a destiny, like we were supposed to be together even through all these kind of, you know, ups and downs. From quite early on, I always knew that it's going to be forever. It was just something I just knew.
And inevitably, a few years later, we had our first child, Honor. We had another child, Liberty. So I had Grace, Liberty, and Honor. I had 2 beautiful kids with Audrey, Amber and Jet. And despite their father being somewhat of a dick when they were growing up, they've turned out as really great adults. And there was a very, very frosty period with Jet when I left his mother and met Grace. And he didn't speak to me for like 4 or 5 years. But time heals a lot of shit, obviously. And now we've got a great relationship. In fact, he's just had a son himself, so now I'm a grandfather. I've actually got 2 other grandchildren, both girls.
To see Don with kids is a really sweet thing. That's the softer side of him. It kind of melts the heart.
Everything I am comes from music. It was music that got me to the Roxy. It was music that got me to Jamaica. It was music that got me into being a filmmaker. Music is the elixir of life. It's a great way to kind of communicate to people through culture. Music has that potential to change people's life, to inform and inspire. I've learned more from music than I've learned from anything else to this very day. My love of music, art, film and that, it's a very personal thing. I don't give a fuck if you like it. I'm not on some life mission to educate the people. I'm trying to educate myself.
Suck it to me, baby.
Wake the town and tell the people. I'm Don Letts, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your guide for a musical ride on BBC Six Music. I've spent my whole life charging forwards. I've always hoped I'd be so busy that I wouldn't have time to look back. Most people come and go on this planet and no one even knows they fucking existed. I guess I don't want to be one of those people. But you just work towards something that's slightly better than when you arrived.
It's like you have this vision of yourself and who you might be, and you try your hardest to become it. Don certainly has become it. So I would say there's a lot of larger-than-life characters in Don's life, but that's because that's effectively what he is.
He's a person of conviction. He had something to say and wasn't shy in saying it. His heart's always in the right place and he's honest to goodness. What you see is what you get. That's his voice.
He was trying to always make people feel inclusive to his thing. It's not just our thing, this is your thing too. We're not here to take something, we're here to give.
I know full well what it's like to be alone, to break down racial stereotypes, to break down perceptions of who you are, and what you represent. It works in two ways, I think. It either motivates you or it can crush you.
Don is still making films, he's DJing, he's doing radio shows, still innovating, using culture to change the world around him, and that is power. That's fire, and that's essential.
My parents' generation were like work fodder as far as England was concerned. They gave their hearts and soul to help rebuild this country. And, yeah, it's not appreciated. It never is it? Punk rock's a living thing. It's something to look forward to, not something to look back on.
We are one!
It's the birthright of all young people. It's the birthright of everybody. And this spirit and attitude is not just about music. It's not even just about art.
Black lives matter!
You can get punk rock about anything you do. And it wasn't something designed to look back on. It can take you forward. Maybe they'll realise that the best you can do is to work towards things you probably won't see happen. Let them take the ball and take it to the next space. Have a good time, look good, and try your very best not to be a cunt.